happy to be back to see you again. A voice that is crying or shouting, saying, "Make the way of the Lord straight." Well, what is the way of the Lord? What is the way, the road that in the last segment we talked about, making straight? Well, all the religious teachings and traditions and doctrine that you've heard can be swept aside for something far more simple. For example, here's a verse that says exactly what true religion is. Oh, one verse. We don't even need the whole book. Of course, the whole book reinforces this verse. That's what the whole book is for. But this is one verse. And it gives a caveat just before this verse. It says, "If any man seems himself to be a formal worshiper, yet does not bridle his tongue, this man's worship is futile." Unfortunately, I'm using the JW or the Jehovah's Witness version because this one I've read 7 times and I know exactly where to find stuff. But how do you like that? If a man thinks himself to be a formal worshiper and does not bridle his tongue, his worship is useless. Why bridle your tongue if you're going to say all kinds of fabulous things? What is one of our favorite things to do when we have nothing to do? Sit around and talk about cars, maybe if you're men, about dresses, maybe if you're women. How about people? We sit around and talk about people. And lots of times the speech is not good. You'll probably agree that gossip is one of the most common things that people who have idle time and are sitting with their friends indulge in. But that is not a good thing unless we're discussing how we can help somebody or how we can be of benefit to a certain family. What about how stupid this person is? Or they ripped me off? Or they talk so loud? Or did they ever get fat? Or their marriage is crumbling? Or they can't seem to look after their kids? Or they drink too much? Isn't that a common conversation? But tearing our brother or our friend or our neighbor down is the opposite to what we're supposed to be doing. One of the commands is to love your neighbor as yourself. That doesn't, the word is neighbor. So that isn't friend, associate, brother. Neighbor indicates everyone around you. Your neighbor, the person next door, you may not even know them very well, but you're supposed to love them. We'll get a little bit more into what loving them means. The very next verse, here is what true worship is, says the Bible. True worship that is clean from the standpoint of our God, the Father, is this: care for orphans and look after widows in tribulation. Well, in those days, widows and orphans didn't have a social service where they were looked after. So what was their tribulation? Well, an orphan, their tribulation is just being alive. how much more horror could your life be losing your parents? And a widow losing her husband and source of income in those days was the common tradition, was left with no way to support herself, and indicating that she's older and not able to work. And the orphan indicating that they're younger and not able to work. True worship is looking after those people. And what is their need? Yeah. Open your wallet. This is their need. Cash. So, if in those days true worship was opening your wallet, then in these days true worship is opening your wallet. Oh, there's social systems that look after them. There isn't. The income that is paid through these social systems is pathetic. Lots of people that are on welfare, they may not be an orphan, but the statistics are 85% of people on welfare are mentally ill. And the other group may have physical illness that they don't even understand or know about. Or they may have an addiction, or they may have been brutally abused when they were a child, or sexually abused, and are a basket case. Oh, go out and get a job. Believe me, I know lots of these people. I was one of these people. You wouldn't hire them if they came to you for a job. I promise you. So, their rent is $500, their paycheck is $500. Oh, you still say they should work, they should go rake leaves or something. Trust me, in this country, Canada or the States, you can't even rake leaves legally and charge for it. Or shovel snow. You can't do it. It's not legal. The owner of the home has to pay WCB. Even for babysitters. It is not easy. The laws that we've enacted in these countries have forced people on welfare. And then we get mad because we have to pay for them. But we should not be getting mad, because loving your neighbor means looking after him. Just because we're not used to opening our wallet in this country, because we're so doggone greedy, doesn't mean that that's what's supposed to happen. That just means it is the custom we've grown up in. And it's wrong. Looking after widows and orphans in their suffering, or in their destitution, or in their poverty, or people on welfare, or people mentally ill. It just means people that don't have as much as you. That's all. There's no name that they go under. It just means people who have less. In one part in the scriptures, it says that there should be a balancing of assets. So the person with much didn't have too much, and the person with little didn't have too little. When the true Christian congregation was set up, if you want to put it that way, in Acts 4, I think it mentions, people sold their extra properties and their extra, today, vehicles, quads, motorcycles, boats, and they brought in the money. And they gave it to the apostles, and the apostles distributed it. That was true religion. Going to church and putting a couple bucks in a plate to send to the hierarchy, that is not religion. And it says so right there. James 1:27, look it up in your Bible. In every translation written, it is the same. What you have been told is a lie. You have been misled. if you understand religion to be something different. I'm just a voice, that's all. A voice to tell you what the whole culmination of these scriptures, pardon me, this pathetic book, the JW version. Let's use this one, the Knox version, which is fabulous, is all saying. To look after your neighbor. Another place it is put this way. And this was a king of Israel, one approved by God. He says, I've been young and now am old, and I've never seen a righteous man begging for bread. In those days it was a little different. God dealt with Israel directly and daily. So he describes a righteous man. I'll read it to you in 4 translations this book has. Fabulous book. This one says, he is ever merciful and lendeth, and his seed is blessed. This one says, all day long he is merciful and deals graciously and lends. This one says, all day long he is gracious and lends. This one says, they are always generous and lend freely. Now, if you lend, it says you cannot lend with interest. And it also says, if you lend, do not expect back what you lent out. Because if you are lending to someone who's poverty-stricken, with what will they repay you? If you can afford to lend to them, you can likely afford to not receive it back. You want to know what true religion is, that is it. Any other thing is a distraction. Any other thing is bordering on a lie. I am a voice calling out from the desert. In other words, an obscure location, no notable city. I'm not from Rome, or I'm not from New York. Just a voice from the desert, not even a name, because it doesn't matter. It's all these verses put together. What do they say? Love your neighbor. Open your wallet. You might find it as a commandment and go, oh, doggone, okay, that's what I got to do, and start handing it out. Of course, you need to be selective and find the people that really need it. But look for them. You'll find them very easily. The woman who's counting out change for her last loaf of bread in the department store, pay for the bread. Fill her whole fridge. It's that easy. You just found someone. That's what a voice calling from the desert will say. Straighten the road to serving God acceptably. Remove the stones, fill in the potholes, take down the hills, and make it straight. Here's the straight road. Open your wallet. Choose carefully. Another expression is, it's better to teach a person to fish than give him a fish. First, you need to give him a fish. He needs to eat. And then as you're giving him fish, teach him how to fish on his own. If you can teach the person how to make money, that's great. Usually people aren't just sitting around not making money because they don't want to. So you may find the need to carry on with the person that you've found. And believe me, you'll make the best friend you ever had. They will love you to death. Not just for the money, but because you cared for them. when nobody else would. And that brings me to the point of Israel. We mentioned about Israel. There's three that I know that call themselves Israel. The actual location in the Middle East, the Jehovah's Witnesses, and the United States of America. Because it says Israel would expand their rulership to the whole planet. They would be gathered from among the nations, and North America is a melting pot of nationalities from all over the planet. And Israel as well, they were gathered together to that land. So are they the Israel of God? Are they the Israel that was repopulated? Are they the Israel that is approved? Well, do they all lend freely? Are there no poor because all the rich have balanced out the deficiency? Do they all lend without interest? Do they all avoid gossiping and slandering their neighbor? If that's not the case, then they are not the repopulated Israel. They cannot be. Neither Jehovah's Witnesses, neither the United States. Because what we just read is true worship. So if all of the population is not practicing true worship, they cannot be Israel. Oh, so you say there's no such thing and there never will be. Well, there is such thing. Right now, there are true Israelites, or another word for it is Jews. Paul said that a man who is a Jew of the flesh is not a Jew. That means that God had taken his special approval of the nation away, and he did, and given it to people who cleanse their heart and become a Jew in the true sense of the word on the inside, not of the flesh, but their heart, their inner desires, which translates into deeds. So is there Israelites around? Is there Jews? You may know some. There are. There are lots of people, probably in the millions, who love their neighbor and give to them and share with them and find other neighbors in their locality that are in need. Will there ever be a nation? Absolutely. These people will be gathered together to one chunk of land. They will be called to that chunk of land. I'm quite sure it isn't in the Middle East. I have a location that fits all the biblical description, and I will mention it in further days, possibly in the next episode, because there will be in Israel, and the people who love their neighbor will be gathered there, and also the poor of the land, possibly of the whole country, will be flowing there to be looked after. The mentally ill, prostitutes that have been horribly treated and put in that position against their will, depressed people, poor people, those abandoned by society. Yes, they will be collected together in one location, and they need to be, because there needs to be a community that God approves of, and it says will put his spirit there. Now we're getting into wild religious teaching, God's spirit. What does that mean? Oh, who knows? But it means his approval, and that those people there would feel it, and they will, and that will come in the next episode, hopefully. Talk more about Israel and about those Israelites being gathered together to one place. But know for sure that any nation or religion that calls themselves Israel today cannot be unless all of them follow those scriptures, being gracious and lending always or daily, and the widows and the orphans or the poor and the destitute are all cared for. And it's going to happen, assuredly. Thank you so much for listening. I will be back. What's my name? Does it matter? Just a voice, making the way straight, bulldozing down the mountain, filling in the potholes, so that you can travel the road acceptable by God. Thank you very much for listening, and have a wonderful day.